I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the Monday edition of Conversations with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along. Monday, we talk with community leaders, elders, organizers, activists, people who want to make good trouble, I think it's called. We're going to start the conversation talking with the one of the people that is archetypical. I'm not sure if that's the right word. I may be making this word up, but who modifies, who reflects, who is in the mold of a person who makes good trouble. And that's my friend, Robin Hickman uh, Winfield. Got to get it right. Unmute your mic, Robin. Unmute your mic. Yeah.
There we go.
So I've been calling Robin Hickman all my life. I know her family, and she has the joy now of being Robin Hickman Winfield, and that's such a wonderful thing. But I got to keep burning it in my head, okay? Robin, good to see you again. Thank you for the wonderful conversation we had Friday, and thank you for being here today just to remind people about an important thing going on right now. And I don't know if you know Tabitha Montgomery. Let me introduce you if you don't. Tabitha is with the Powderhorn Neighborhood Association in South Minneapolis, an organizer, a warrior, a principal, and gifted young leader in our community. So we're going to talk about the neighborhood when you and I are finished. But let me introduce you guys first of all.
Hello, sister.
Oh, it's so wonderful to meet you, Robin. And Al, I feel like I need to send you a check for that introduction. I appreciate that.
Well,
hey, yes, sister has a gap too. Sister, yes. That gap, I saw that gap. Yeah, in your tooth. Yes.
Well, so Robin, let's talk about tonight. And the key word, make good trouble. Tonight is a special event, part of a national series, a screening and conversation around the life and work, a documentary on life and work of the Venerable John Lewis. Talk about tonight in your role as a partner in the Ordway Theater in St. Paul.
Yes, we are so proud, so honored. The Ordway is a part of a national partnership of performing arts centers that were brought together by the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, brought together about 60 performing arts centers around the country that have been doing the good trouble work in performing arts to host a national screening of this amazing monumental documentary on the life of Congressman John Lewis, brought to us by a phenomenal storyteller, filmmaker, Don Porter. As a media maker, it is so important that we as Black media makers tell our Black stories. And so the film is out. The Twin Cities Film Society has been streaming it for a few months now, but now a national audience will come to this with tonight. For the last few weeks, it has been screened. People have been able to see it, and at the Ordway, we have provided to some civil rights organizations, racial justice organizations. We have gifted passes, complimentary passes. So we're really proud of that. Partners of ours for over a number of years that have worked with us. But tonight will be a national screening with a panel, very distinguished panel. We'll talk about the life and legacy of Congressman Lewis, but also the times that we're in. The landscape of the times around racism, racial justice, and equity. It's a very powerful discussion tonight that, we would just like to have folks join us in this conversation. And we want that representation from Minnesota. The globe, the world is watching the Twin Cities right now. As we look at and we go through this journey of justice here in the Twin Cities after the murder of our brother George Floyd, the murder of our brother, Philando Castile and others. And so the world's looking at us. What are we doing here in Minnesota? So I hope that we show out as a part of this monumental event.
And showing up, critically important. Robin, just briefly, I know we got a short time with you, but I always think it's appropriate to talk to the legacy that you represent that you bring to our community. You, not only in your marriage to the Winfield family, but the Hickman Frazier family is a monumental family. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to give reflections on those pioneers that paved the way to you.
Well, again, very proud, to be a part of, both families. I mean, again, we look at my mother's family as a Frazier, that only girl of 6 brothers, by way of Fergus Falls, Minnesota. I'm a very proud 5th generation Minnesotan. Fergus Falls and all of the amazing, powerful Black families from Aiken County, Fergus Falls, Minnesota. Where I think of Jimmy Jam Harris, from Minnesota. I think of Andre Samoa and his father, Fred Anderson, that from Fergus Falls, Minnesota. So many families that came from there. Of course, Daddy and his, legacy. My grandmother, Lillian Parks Thomas, who was just a warrior here in St. Paul. Parks, being a part of the Parks lineage, my great uncle Gordon Parks, who was my vision of possibilities as a media maker. But I'm a daughter of the village. When I think of those men and women and godfathers and village godmothers and aunties and uncles from this village here in St. Paul, I'm a Selby Dale girl by way of Rondo. And all of that. And so I believe we've lived the answers that we seek today as we find ourselves for such a time as this. We have lived the answers that we seek today. And so in the spirit of Sankofa, let us reclaim those things that we have lost. We know what we need to do. And I stand in this as to be able to birth an institution. I remember growing up and my godfather, village uncle Mahmoud El Khati, told us we have to be institution builders. And so after a long career in public television, I left there and I built an institution, Soul Touch Productions. I'm in the business of touching souls. So in partnering with various organizations of art, culture, and history and media, and establishing my own institution and partnering to ensure, I'm very proud to have worked with the Ordway since 2005, 15 years, but formally in 2010, birthing, taking our place center stage. That is a movement that this year will celebrate a decade of walking with community to ensure, as Mama would say, take our rightful place in that institution of art. Performing arts, ensuring that we show up not only in the seats and not only actors and artists from all over the world coming into our community, breathing life into our children, but making sure we're in those offices and we're in those cubicles, making sure that we partner with powerful community partners like McFarlane and Inside News and Tracy Williams at Minnesota Spokesman Recording, KMOJ, Mashley, newspaper publications, and making sure that we are in the mix at every level, making sure we are using Black vendors and supporting the Latino community and Asian American, Indigenous community partners, so that every level we are taking our rightful place. That is what we must do. And these institutions, yes, always supporting our community institutions, but it's not an either or situation.
Right.
We deserve to be on all stages. So that's what my work has been about. But every step, walking with our young people, ensuring that I'm in my rightful place in my Uncle Gordon Parks' legacy. That's what he would desired. So that's a fight sometimes, but I'm going to make sure. Teaching the babies at Gordon Parks High School, ensuring and armoring them up with his legacy. So there's a lot of work, but I'm excited walking alongside with my husband. I love saying that. I love saying that. Waited a long time, but in God's time. And so now we can walk together as a light for this time that we're in that seems very dim. But we all have it in us to be that beacon of light, as my Aunt Dorothea says, who was with the Ordway for a very long time, along with others, Roxanne Givens, Elsa Vega Perez, those folks before me, holding that institution accountable to be there for us. But Aunt Dorothea would always say, take that bushel basket off of your light, place that light on the hill, because for this time that we're in right now, we need to collectively bring our lights together so that we can illuminate the path to freedom. And so I'm just really excited right now we can't extinguish each other's lights anymore. We have to unify that collective light and
amplify the light,
amplify it.
Magnify.
So I love coming on with you. We have a great season ahead of us at the Ordway. I'm there strong. We're going to be lifting up that decade of taking our place center stage. We're going to be honoring with our Sally Awards, honoring the Black men of the Sallys, those brother visionary artists. Over the last 20 years, Black men who have empowered us through the arts. With that celebration, that special's coming up. Our work with community through taking our place center stage, a decade strong. We're going to celebrate that all year long. I'm excited. I'm just excited. You know, I appreciate, love you as a mentor, and thank you for walking with me and always lifting me up. But it's, as my dear friend Jamel Shabazz, a great photographer, walking in the footsteps of my Uncle Gordon, said, 2020, clear vision, in spite of all this other stuff.
There it is.
Thank you so much.
Look, Robin, thank you so much. You're always an inspiration and a joy. And much love to you and your family, and to my brother, Steve. You guys walk tall, be strong, be your true self.
Yes.
And that means be beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Take care.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is the Monday session of Conversations with Al McFarlane. Such a joy to talk to Robin Hickman Winfield. I'm going to continue with my newer friend, Tabitha Montgomery. And Tabitha is leading the team over at the Powderhorn Neighborhood Association. And Tabitha, what I do on Mondays is invite colleagues of yours to join me just to kick it for a few minutes on what's on your mind. You know, what's happening in your neighborhood or our neighborhood, the neighborhood, priorities. You can invite people to join, support, to know, to protest, you know, one of the things I want to ask you about, though, is that this past weekend, you had a porch fest.
Yes.
How exciting. Tell me about that. How did that go?
Well, listen, Al, let me start with a couple of things, because I have to thank you. I have to thank you for this platform, for your dedication, for your leadership, for your wisdom, your kindness, creating spaces like this, to your point, just to kick it. I am excited to be your new friend, or one of many, I'm sure. And so thank you for giving me a little bit of opportunity to share with you. I have to say, my sister, my new gap teeth friend, Robin, who give her a shout out. Just because of her remarks collectively for me, what came up this Monday was how serious and how seismic and how positive they were, and that they did not shy away from still, in the midst of being extremely positive, that there was work to do. And so in the midst of us all understanding that in order to get the communities that we so long claim that we care about and desire, that there's work and plenty of it for all of us to do, but you can do it with a spirit of generosity and positivity that is contagious. Because certainly I'm just going to try to play into what she set the stage, which is part of Porch Fest this past weekend was all about helping to further and extend community vision and light that certainly came before me as a staff member, certainly came before the collective staff that's here shepherding the organization at this time. I mean, it was born out of the vision of two community members, Nicole Duxbury being one of them, a powerful and wonderful person in our community who is all about healing and giving. And what we did and what we attempt to do as an organization is to come alongside community-based events when we can to ensure that they can continue to happen. And so we serve as a fiscal agent for residents typically along 17th Avenue who have been able to bring us together, connect us in mind, body, soul, and spirit through music. And although we weren't able to be on people's porches this year, we said, listen, the last thing we want to do is cancel anything. So we're just going to pivot. If that means we're going to make a hard pivot, let's see if we can reach out to some of our other community friends, specifically Pillsbury House and Theater. Shout out to everyone over there who is always so much of a wonderful partner for us. And Frostbeard Studio allowed us to take over their parking lots so that we could still highlight 12 amazing local artists and stream most of the event throughout the night. So we started at 3 and we rocked till 10, and it was awesome. And so it was just one example for us as a community organization, where we say, listen, there is still ways for us to get together. There is still ways for us to convene, even and not only taking into account all of the rules and necessities of navigating a pandemic. We did that, but we can still do that in a way that honors the things that will get us through this season, right, of needing to be extremely serious and seismically positive in the midst of everything that's going on in our community, the heavy stuff, the stuff that we'll probably talk about a little bit next.
Well, you know, the arts are so critical, and creativity is absolutely essential to acknowledge it and to allow it to flourish, to support it, to nurture it, you know. And I think projects like this collaboration that produces Porch Fest are a testament to the value of that. My next door neighbor, I live in North Minneapolis on Thomas Avenue, and my next door neighbors are musicians. These are guys that play a combination of country music. They play some jazz, some soul, but they're, you know, basically some grown up, matured folk musicians, right?
Yeah.
And so what they told me last year, they participated in Porch Fest and loved it. What they've been doing all summer long is every Saturday or Sunday, they sit out on their front porch and two guys play guitar and pick fiddle, you know, and they sing, set a microphone up, and people walking up and down the street or in the park across the street can just enjoy and keep on moving with it, you know. So the spirit of it is contagious, as you say, and we have to do it. We must do it. It heals. It's part of the healing force of community, and it's a wonderful thing. Give people who are listening on Facebook an idea of the boundaries or the territory of the Powderhorn neighborhood. What is that community? Describe it if you would.
Yeah, so we're right here in the heart of what we call South Minneapolis. So our border to the north is Lake Street. Our southern border is 38th Street. Our western border is Chicago, right? So right there, 38th in Chicago, where our brother, Mr. Floyd's life was taken. And then our border to the east is Cedar. And so it's almost a perfect rectangle, but overall that represents Powderhorn Park. So that's the community that our little neighborhood association strives to most directly support. And yet we know that we're often a part of conversations and in partnership and collaborations. Certainly, you know, my dear friends, Alicia Smith and Carmen Means, who hold down my neighborhood organizations to the west and the east of me. But ultimately, sometimes people think about Powderhorn as Greater Powderhorn, which is consists of about 7 other neighborhoods, right? So generally speaking, we are trying to be as active and as serious as we can in South Minneapolis overall, and the heart of it is Powderhorn Park for us at this moment.
Here's what I think. Let me just say it out loud because I want to speak it into existence. I know that you mentioned your colleagues, Carmen and Alicia over South, and the 3 of you are impeccable and formidable. Individually, I see you and hold you up as fierce women, fierce leaders in the community, fierce spirits, and people that are unafraid and committed to change, who walk to the mantle of leadership with courage and with a sense of dedication and a sense of possibility, and therefore excitement and joy. That's a wonderful thing. And I think your counterparts in North Minneapolis include powerful people like my friend Diana Hawkins, who is your counterpart at the Hawthorne Neighborhood Association, and Kathy Spann, who is
over at Jordan.
At Jordan, you know. And there's a couple more sisters, but the point I'm making is that, you know, I think there's like 7 or 8 or 9, maybe it's only 5. You can correct me. Black women who are executive directors or leaders of neighborhood associations. But the group of you as a group is a power block that is unimaginable, unconceivable power that you all have if you're operating on an agenda that's not specifically homogenous, but harmonic, right? That allows for difference, distinction, nuance, but is guided by a common vision of building community and supporting the dignity of human life, of humans, right? And I think the beauty of this is that from where you come from where we come from, inside our culture, inside Black experience, there is a command to work towards freedom and liberation, and the generous nature of our spirit says that our freedom and our liberation are not exclusive. They are inclusive.
That's
and
right.
The force that guides us is a force that supports human beings everywhere, any and all of our neighbors, in any shapes, forms, and styles they come in. We celebrate, we love, and we give our all to, right? And
That's
so
right.
I see the three of you in South Minneapolis, and probably some more, and the 3 or 4 that are sisters in North Minneapolis. I see you all working together, and between and among you, really shaping the entire NRP process, the neighborhood revitalization program of the city, and being a model for the country. So I'm throwing it out there. You could, I'm trying to promote this. Okay.
I appreciate you setting it up so nicely. I'm just going to try to knock it down over the fence and just say, one, the truth of what you just shared in terms of the way that you see it. What I'm going to try to speak to is where I think the harmony for me comes from. I think the harmonic nature of what we are attempting to demonstrate is the fact that we're not only attempting to contribute and play our part in community building, but overall community health. And I firmly believe that the only way that we can get to a place of overall community health is recognizing that every soul, every life, every light deserves to be exactly where they're at. So part of our cultural community is also understanding that our reality has always existed on a spectrum, whether we was on the low end or the high end. And so there is no need to turn our noses or to turn our back on anybody, despite where they might find themselves in their journey. And that just speaks to, Al, in my opinion, what we're down here attempting to do is advocate as clearly and simply and as powerfully for resources, so that everybody who is on their own journey, without judgment, without condemnation, without expectation, has a real chance of being seen by their community. Because there are plenty of us, right, that we know what this season has brought. It's been challenging in South Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, in various ways and for various reasons, and not just because of the trotted out answer of violence in this season. You know what has been violent is the deficit of investment of resources in our community for decades. And so it created a powder keg when we find ourselves in concurrent crises to only ignite what was already present, which is a gap in the fundamental ability oftentimes for our communities to be in the best position to heal from the inside out, to heal from the inside out. And so we're hoping to do a little bit of what Robin spoke to, is to reclaim that. How do we, in our own way, envision what does healing look like? What does employment look like? What does self-sufficiency look like? When we say liberation, understanding that it's okay to begin to talk about deconstructing systems and structures that has not served the collective community well, not because it's easy just to replace any one thing overnight, but what you will not do, what we will not concede, is that any word has power over us. So we are able to talk about the idea of defund and abolish without getting behind any one of those constructs, because what we're most interested in is understanding what is the path to healing the community if it involves any one of those things. It also might involve reform, and we're not afraid of the reform word, but we need to be in the position as leaders to help everybody in our community not to operate from a place of what they think they know, but help us to all get to a place of what we actually know in order to move the needle. Because what we know to be true is many of the things that we've already had in place has not always served the collective community well for any number of reasons. And so that's what we're serious about, I think, in South and North Minneapolis. It's shining a light on the fact that it will take additional time. Nobody should be looking for anybody down here to have a magic wand, because these issues, despite what some people might attempt to convince you, did not just crop up in 2020. They are just not a result of the pandemic. It is not just because our brother, Mr. Floyd, lost his life, right? It is a systemic and serious system and cycle of things that have been bombarding communities like ours, that have the profile like ours, the rich and diverse and beautiful diversity from cultural and language and economic levels, right? That we collectively, not only in this city and in this state, but across this country, have not really ever figured out how to fully embrace. What does it mean to really have a healthy community that is rooted in diversity? And diversity on every level, right? How do we make sure that we are creating communities that are inclusive for our disabled body brothers and sisters, right? So the disability community.
The history is either or, one or the other. So Minnesota, therefore, has the best health in the nation for white people, but not for diverse populations, right? So that's been the paradigm, that we serve what they consider to be the majority and the will and the interest of the majority. And if you happen to be not part of that, sorry, but we've got great standings, great image, etc. And what you're saying in contradistinction to that is there's another model, another way that allows us not to be in the either or proposition, but to say that all of this is possible, all of it is doable. And then when we do it this way, we end up enhancing everybody, even the advantage you think you have. We can bring you to a better place than you are now, and we can be where we should be, which is at a very best place as well. That's what I hear you saying.
That's right. Well, because here's the thing, we should not be afraid of any change that improves our health. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about it? I mean, part of it is difficult when people don't believe that things that what we're talking about, that there is an actual solution, a guarantee. Sometimes you have people in our communities who are still looking for a guarantee to life, to living, to avoid hardship. What I promise you to be true is that we are experiencing a series and a new season of different degrees of trial and different degrees of awakening, and they can both coexist. Okay, so there are some trials that will come about of changing or attempting to move anything that is deeply rooted in any society, in any structure. And I'm not saying that that's an easy thing, that's a negligible thing, or that's something that should just be people should get over it thing. What I'm saying, it's a reality thing. Mm-hmm. And if we accept that some of the things that we know that we need to work on will be challenging, will take things from us that we may not even believe we have today, it creates a path to become healthier, because we're willing to look at that thing seriously in the face without judgment about, okay, it has worked to a certain degree, but it has not worked perfectly. And generally, because it's not necessarily even gotten close to working perfectly, it has had a demonstrative effect typically on communities of color. And we continue to publish these varying disparity reports, whether it be because of air pollution or disparities in who's being educated in housing and who is being able to be housed. You could go on and on and on, and it always seems to find the same level in terms of negative impact in communities as rich and as complex and as beautiful as ours. And so I think that there's a real opportunity, as best as we can, is to diffuse the confusion by embracing the words, because the truth of it is we shouldn't fear the word. We should be more worried about the inaction. So it's not the words that we should be concerned about as a collective community. It is the inaction when we hear people saying that I'm willing to stand for social and additional equity, or the thing about, I'm willing to put on a I can't breathe t-shirt, but I don't actually know what that will cost me or what in my life will look different. So there's a lot of indicators that would suggest people are wanting to do something different, to be at a different place. And yet to do anything different and to reach a different place, we're going to have to figure out as a community, what are we capable, willing, and able to begin to change in a very serious way, that we get outcomes that is reflective of the mood of this community, the country, and the world writ large when it comes to more healing, less division, more equity, really addressing and naming the harms that we have that we've caused individually and collectively as a country and as a society. How do we really pull that back in a way that it's not about shaming and blaming, but it's certainly about naming and claiming and healing and getting to the next level?
I'm Al McFarlane. This was Conversations with Al McFarlane. My conversation with Tabitha Montgomery. She's the executive director of the Powderhorn Neighborhood Association, a legacy community association in South Minneapolis, and a wonderful conversation. Tabitha, what's your background? We might have gone over this before, but always good to share. What brings you to the Tabitha Montgomery Up to Date?
I am fortunate. So I've been in the Twin Cities now about 22 years or so, but I hail from Detroit. I'm very proud of that, just in terms of that's what for so long helped me to find a sense of home, in addition to my people, where it always felt like I was a part of a loving household. And so this is my first foray, quite frankly. I celebrate my 5th anniversary with Powderhorn this past August. But before that, most of my professional career had been in corporate environments and spent some time with Target and Best Buy and things of that nature. But the pivot came because after my last layoff, right, going through any series of layoffs, I had already been volunteering, doing some board service for several different organizations, one of which, as a shout out to Mixed Blood Theater and the Alzheimer's Association, Minnesota, North Dakota chapter, ACE in the City, Midtown Global Market, Upstream Arts, have all allowed me at different times and in different ways to serve on their boards or serve as a volunteer. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was looking to transition from more of a for-profit entity, I said, what would it look like and what would it mean if I'm able to find an opportunity where I can blend some of the skills that I have with more of a missional frame, to actually think through, it's less about a widget and a gidget and more about what is the call to arms, if you will, that the organization or the entity has espoused. And here at PPNA, I love the mission. It has 4 pillars, really, but it really centers on saying, hey, we are here to facilitate community engagement. How do we bring people together? We care about embracing a diversity of voices. So what are we doing to actively not just hear from the same folk? And how do we contribute and foster community and economic development? And so it's a very broad mission, but I think it provides such deep direction and clarity about the work that we should be attempting to do. And so that's kind of what brought me to this, is that I found that neighborhood organizations in particular, and this organization specifically, was well positioned to really be focused on how do they make a missional impact.
What was your role at Target and Best Buy? What was your profession?
They let me, so when I was at Target, I was a merchant. So this is when I was on the department store side. I came here out of college. That was my first role. And right before they blended, Dayton Hudson's Marshall Fields became Marshall Fields, I was a buyer. So I purchased houseware goods. I purchased men clothing. My first analyst role, if you will, was for men's sportswear, Polo, Ralph Lauren. Mm-hmm. And it was a formidable experience because I tell you what, even to this day, sometimes large entities and institutions like a Target, they have such rigor around the training that you receive in order for you to be able to do your job well, mm-hmm. that it has many of the things that I learned at that time has stuck with me in terms of how to think critically about trying to make sense out of a potential idea or business proposition. Mm-hmm. And I think that translates whether you're in for-profit or nonprofit. Everybody is selling something, sometimes not in exchange for monetary gain, but certainly maybe in exchange for people's ability to believe and then take action. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of what we're talking about now, Al, with PPNA is so focused on how do we help the community to buy into the fact that we all should be echoing in one chorus, if you will, the needs for more affordable housing, and how do we help to enlighten and help inspire the community to make calls for livability and safety that's really rooted in wholeness, right? How do we play our role in ensuring economic development doesn't demand or mean that it's going to be massive cultural displacement, and greed is elevated, which some might call gentrification. So how do we help to not just sell that idea, but to convey the reality and the alternative of what we could have if we combat those things that are not serving us well. Mm-hmm. So it's things like that. That was a very formative experience for me. When I made my way to Best Buy, I spent some time on their innovation team. So it was really about thinking through what are some of the new business models, right, that the company might explore, and what would that entail, and how do we test that, and how do we get feedback before we enter a market or a new category too quickly. So that was really a lot of strategy work is what I would say. So in both instances, just felt as if I was able to take a lot away from those experiences. That has allowed me to then be able to think really critically and deeply. And again, for me, what I believe, not to say that those organizations don't have missions, but for me, more socially missional aims, like what neighborhood organizations provide and are attempting to do in the city.
I make a comment here. I started off working as a newsman, first of all, at the St. Paul Pioneer Press, but then went to General Mills and worked in community and public relations, public affairs. But what I noticed then, and what you just said reminds me of it, that's why I'm bringing it up, is that my colleagues, the people who are seasoned executives and mid-level executives at General Mills, it seemed to me also had relationships with people in the community who might have been cousins, friends, neighbors, and a lot of the supportive services, soft services that a company like General Mills could buy were being really purchased through a friends network, people that somebody who's on staff and responsible could vouch for their capacity to deliver at a good price and timely, et cetera, and consistent with the values of the company. I always bring this up because I try to send a message out to those of us who are still in the corporate arena, which is a great place to be. You should not only be doing the job that you're being paid to do and doing it better than anybody else, but you should also be doing something with the knowledge and the access you have to build your own community, family, your own economy. And so these things are not contradictory.
That's right.
You can do both, right? So I'm a Jamaican, right? And so the Jamaican joke is 5 jobs, right? And that's a good way to be looked at, as a person who people expect to do 3, 4, 5 things simultaneously, each effectively and all positively. And so how do we, and for you to say you were able to gain tremendous and specific knowledge, capabilities in the corporate arena, and then make a decision to bring those skills and those powers to play in community, I think that's wonderful. And I commend you for it and encourage our listeners and viewers to think about where they are and how do we fully exploit the opportunities at hand so that we grow individually and our culture and our community. So where did you go to school, Tabitha? What's your school story?
So I was part of the Big Ten. I went to Michigan State, go green, go white. I'm a Spartan. And it was, again, one of those things that was a pretty formative experience, massive campus. At that time, I think 40, 50,000 students. Yep. Certainly felt like a number in some instances, and then it certainly in different ways felt like a small family. Sometimes when you're moving in certain smaller cultural groups, because at that time I think we were probably, there was about 14, 15% of the student body who identified as Black folks, African Americans. And so it was in many ways very large and in others extremely small. And I think I benefited from both. I actually enjoyed the large classes in terms of being a part of a lecture hall with 300 people, 400 people, and not because we were able to collaborate or anything, but because you realized how important in moment was for you to pay attention for you. Like it was a part of an early informative experience around what I realized is I wasn't in a small classroom to create a relationship with the teacher who cared if I got it. I, at that moment in my life, had to decide, do I care if I get it? And what am I willing to do? I'm going to have to sit down front. I'm going to have to stay a little bit later. I'm going to have to go to the TA hours. What am I willing to do? And it just was one example in that environment of being in a position early on, needing to make a decision about who and how I was going to operate right in this life. Right. So that's why I said with Robin's comments earlier, what struck me and what I love is how serious and how seismic they were in terms of being extremely positive, but extremely directional in terms of extremely specific about not only what the role that arts play in the essential nature, right? Let's use that word, which is probably going to be the word of 2020 as it relates to the arts community and artists specifically, about the essential nature that plays in our communities being healthy and whole and being able to move the trajectory of any issue in our community, political, social, or otherwise. And so I think that that's just part of life, right? You are these points in time where you have opportunities. And I say that for me, being able to attend Michigan State certainly was an opportunity. And yet, when you get an opportunity, you still have a lot of decisions that you need to make in order to benefit from that opportunity, right? It's just not something that happens. So sometimes we all make different decisions that prolong, if you will, what we are able to gain or what we learn. And that's okay. That's a part of it. But I was certainly appreciative of my time there.
What was your major? What did you study?
I double majored, Al, in marketing and advertising. I started off thinking I was going to be in journalism, right? And I was really excited. I was like, I'm gonna be writing for newspapers, and you know, I joke now and I said what pulled me out of it was the deadlines. I felt like there was a lot of deadlines. Yeah. It was a little bit stressful, and I said, okay, I'm going to pivot slightly because of that. I'll go the road of getting a business degree and still focusing on communications, if you will. Mm-hmm. And now what you find in life is a series of deadlines. Mm-hmm. So I did not necessarily avoid that. What I would call probably the main impetus for me pivoting my degree choices. But you live and learn is what you realize.
Well, my field of study was journalism and mass communications, and my regret is that I didn't do business school. And so you live and learn, same thing. So I ended up and continue developing, business knowledge through applying what I do in my daily business life. But my recommendation in reflection is that anybody and everybody should have specific training in business, because it's the logic of business and the principles of transactions and planning and logistics that we require to build the kind of future we're looking for. Tabitha, tell me about your mom and your dad, your family. I ask people to give me a sense of what ancestors poured into you to create the you that you are today.
I tell you what, my family, specifically my immediate family and my extended family. I have 3 sisters, and my mom and dad is still with me. And what they have poured into me and given me most freely and most consistently is love. They are my biggest blessing, my biggest W, if you will. This is how I made the come up that I have today, is because I didn't lack any moment of love or being seen in my household. And so, like I said, grew up in Detroit. My mom was in banking. My dad worked over 36 years with the Ford Motor Company. After they retired, they moved back to their home state, Alabama. That's where they are to this day, in Mobile. And they are the reason why I think, for me, that I am attempting the best that I can is to look for love in policies, to look for love in decisions, and to try to support things in this organization that reflects the act of love. So how do we bring people together? How do we speak truth about policies that seem to be excluding someone or a lot of someone's, and it's not helping us to be whole? And I have 3 amazing sisters, and I am the youngest of what my parents had 4 daughters, and all of our names start with T. I still have a sister in Michigan area and one in Florida, and I have one in heaven. And so we are well knit. We fill up any room with laughter, because that is the fuel that allows all of that love to stay permeated in our relationship.
So when you were 5 years old, or 6 or 7, what did you think about in terms of what you might bring to the world? And how did the world look to you then? And how does it look to you now? And finally, this is the big question. You can go anywhere you want to with it. When you think about your opportunity and your responsibility to co-create existence, how does the foundation, the original awareness, play into that? And where do you see yourself and humanity going? Big question.
Yeah, listen, Al, that's massive.
Yeah.
But that's massive. But the thing about it is, I remember what I wanted to do, or what I said I was, what I claimed, what I declared when I was 6,
Mm-hmm.
and that is, I thought I was going to be a minister.
Mm.
And I went to school. I went to a parochial school. It was a Lutheran parochial school. The pastor at the time was Pastor Lunick, and I went up to Pastor Lunick and said, Pastor Lunick, I'm going to be a pastor. And he smiled, and he kind of just patted my head, because it was a part of the Missouri Senate. So I don't think he really believed that this young little girl was going to become a minister, pastor. And I think that as life has evolved for me, there is still very much a room in my heart and my mind that is focused on not only my faith, right, in terms of how I see myself, not who I am, but how I believe that one of the central aims of that faith is rooted in the love not only because of who I worship, but love, as I just described, in terms of what my family gave me. So there's so much about who I am that has just continued to be affirmed and reaffirmed in terms of what was taught to me in one hand, and certainly what I just flat out experienced from the people in my life and in my circles. And so even to this day, I believe that there was a calling that I probably put off, because it comes up more often than I think that I would still expect, in terms of people asking me, when are you going to head to seminary school, or when are you going to start preaching, or where do you preach? And I kind of shrug it off and I laugh. But I also know, and I'm humble enough, that there is something about that statement that I need to sit with, that I need to wrestle with a little bit more, that I have not. I'm not making any announcements today, but I'm simply saying I am aware that that has been with me for quite some time. The best that I can say in terms of what I believe that I've been called to do and how I'm going to apply it to not only this organization and everything else that I'm gifted and blessed to receive and to do, is to center this experience in our decisions in love. Part of it for me is, again, it speaks to love is about receiving it all, okay, and being patient and being able to persevere through even the things that don't feel good. And that's why I really want to reclaim every word that sometimes people might feel is only pejorative and negative. Let's reclaim, as a cultural group, racism. We don't have to fear any word. What we might want to do is to think about, the sooner that we reclaim that word, we can move from being confrontational to medicinal. That if it really is a health crisis, then we will be, as a cultural group, in the position to say, well, why and how can our church groups and our church basements and our community centers be used as spaces where people, just like a person experiencing alcoholism, can walk in and declare, my name is Tabitha and I'm a racist, but I haven't had a racially charged view in the past 5 months or the past 5 minutes. That is the vision by which we need to, in my opinion, be striving for. That's how we get over, is not by letting any one word or any one truth try to define us and to claim us, right? Because then we spend too much time focusing on that reality. Racism is real. Hate is real. Division is real. But when we stand up and when we claim that it will not get over and that we want it to be healed, if a person is exhibiting those tendencies, that it's not about just doing a drive-by diagnosis saying you are racist. It's about saying, why is it that we don't have systems in place for people to get a legitimate diagnosis about being a racist, so that they might be pointed toward the treatment and the group sessions and the work that they need to do to get back on track? Because when we seed the ground to people who are racist, when we pretend as if we have no interest collectively or individually in whether or not they ever change, then there is more room for more racism and more hate and more racists to prevail. So see, we have to get serious about whether or not we want to do anything about that which we keep naming and blaming. And so that is the work in our communities, as uncomfortable as it is. And as much as I believe that the legacy and the true fighters for social and racial justice who have gone before us, like our brother, Congressman Lewis, it's the truth of it is that they have brought us to a point, and it's been phenomenal. We now can write the next chapter and the next chapter after that, so that we are not constantly wrestling with what we already know to be true. Racism is real. People who are racist are real. And just like anything in our community that needs to be healed, it and they too have an opportunity to be healed if we decide that that's something we're going to work on. And so I think that that's how communities will come together. The more that we become learned, and what does that look like for us? How do I help to model and to be in conversations that are difficult and challenging, where you feel like you just want to give up and walk away? How do we stand in the midst of that, knowing that there's work for us to do, not to push it into the shadows, so that it actually can get treated in a way that doesn't continue to allow to grow and metastasize in the dark and in the corners, and is waiting for the right light to shine on it. And then we're wondering, how could we not see it? Well, we saw it, but we didn't want to do anything about it. We just wanted to keep saying that it existed. We're going to have to resource it. So if I believe that resources is one of the ways that we become a stronger community, which is what I believe for us here in Powderhorn, whether that is more resources for mental health care workers, or more access to health care, or more access to housing, whatever that resource is, access to different paths to education. Sometimes you got young people who don't need to be forced to be focused on just academics, but they need to be focused on whether or not they're whole and healthy themselves. And have we allowed them to have an off ramp, so then they can down the road have an on ramp? And we have to understand that it's the decisions that we make when we are not willing to be dynamic and innovative about the things and the systems that exist, because we were familiar with it, we just want it to continue to be what it is, then we continue to be on this journey in a very insincere way. This whole life is about change. This hour that I've been able to be blessed to spend with you has elapsed. It is gone. And so it is the one thing that is consistent. And that's the one thing that we fight tooth and nail. And so that's how we do our best work and our deep work, is when we don't let any word and any one person allow us to become something we're not. I'm not hate. I am light. We are not dark, and regardless of the color of our skin, and we can decide what racism in 2020 means to us.
I think you said a lot. I talked to Robin about good trouble, right? And every now and then I come across a person that speaks with such power and such passion that I get a headache, and I call it a good headache. So in order to prevent and to preserve my own health, I'm going to stop this conversation right now, because I could talk to you for a while, but it would just put me in a position, right, that I would both enjoy and it would cost me dearly.
I understand.
Yeah, so it's a good thing. I'm saying that with a big smile on my face and with love in my heart, and with my mind letting you know how impressed I am with your analysis, your critique, your story, and your capacity to share the story, to tell the story, to declare who you are and what you are, and to stand in that and to be fierce warrior creator. That's what I see you as. So I salute that in you and salute you in that light. So listen, let's close on this note. I'm going to come back and with the foundational vibration, understanding you've laid out today. I want to see how that plays out in wealth creation, how in Powderhorn, how it plays out in home ownership in Powderhorn. How does it play out in health and services for mental health in Powderhorn? How does it play out for educating children and taking care of senior citizens in Powderhorn? How does it play out in getting civic engagement, equity? And so I want to be able to bring the energy, the baseline, and show it at work in these specific areas, these specific projects as we go on down the road. So I want to thank you so much, Tabitha. I've enjoyed
Thank you, Al, for having me.
You've been inspiring and healing in this conversation.
Thank you. Likewise, it has been truly a pleasure. I have been honored to spend a little bit of time with you.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye-bye. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. What a wonderful conversation. What a great, great, great story. And what a marvelous capacity